Okay, welcome to forum. One more time. You know, I was just saying, we do this every Wednesday morning, so when you have suggestions of things you want to see or hear or learn about, please let one of us know. So Kathy and I are here. Talk to us. If you're not on the email list, please let's help you get on the email list so that you'll know ahead of time what our programs are. This morning. Can you guess what we have this morning? I don't think this is someone to talk about his song and dance routine. So please, I'm going to let him tell you mostly about himself because he's got a very, very biography. So please welcome Dan Deuter.
Thank you. And I'm not used to working with a mic, but we're doing it, I guess, for the sound man back there. Anyway, I was the director of Fort Uncompahgre for 12 years on Buffalo, but we're going to go back to the start here and make it really brief here. And currently, Ellie and I live about 5 miles north of town, and I'm still an artist. But I don't, the other stuff is catching up with us. But we still ride horses whenever we can. Okay. Born in '49, this is front step stuff. And that's back when I was so cute. That ended the next 3 months after that. This right here is what changed my entire life. My dad brought home 2 unbroke ponies who learned way faster than my brother and I ever did. We also had more brothers and sisters, but we started off on Lady and Babe. And people say, have you ever been bucked off? I can't even tell you how many times in one day, but it was very frequent. But since then, I've never been without a horse. And I've never owned a bicycle. I've always had them underneath me. Still like it. Ellie and I still ride. There's Lady actually broke. That's one of the few pictures you'll see with me actually in a saddle on a pony, because saddles were for guests or cousins, but we rode bareback almost all the time when we were still on top of the horse. Go through this. Oh, then eventually, we're going to go through this fast. When I was about 20, I went to Alaska, and I worked as a horse wrangler in the mountains in the Talkeetnas in Alaska. So this was up there, learning how to put the double diamonds on the packs. That's where I learned to pack horses. That's also where I learned that they will, if you ride one of their horses, just get on and ride. Because what happened was the guy that I worked for bought a bunch of horses out of Canada. They didn't know if they were broke or unbroke. So one morning we packed up a horse, and he bucked through the campfire. It looked like a Charlie Russell painting, dumped things all over, so it made us mad. So we packed him up the second time. Worked pretty good. He didn't do too much, and so we just tailed him on to another horse and let this other kid, who was supposed to be watching him, watch him. And I said to him a little bit later, where's your horse? He points down to the end of an airstrip. And they're way down there. I said, you think you ought to get him? He goes down there, and instead of just catching his horse and coming back, he walks up behind the pack horse and follows them around, and when they start to walk away, he grabs a hold of the pannier, the box on the side. Wrong. That horse spun around and kicked. It's lucky because it knocked him flat. It kicked over the top of him, but we could see the horse bucking. Broke his lead rope, starts bucking back down the airstrip, and to make a long story short, everything went flying. Just before he got back to camp, In fact, when he got to camp, his face was all white because the flour had blown up. Right? And then, anyway, I took the pack saddle off. Well, the guide went out with another pack horse. I took the pack saddle off that horse and put my riding saddle on. This is not thinking. This is bulletproof, 20 years old. I get on a horse, 3 days ride from the nearest road. And I get on this horse, and this kid that was supposed to be watching was back by then. He goes, "Don't you think he's gonna buck?" I said, "Pretty good chance. Who cares?" Get on this horse, we buck all the way back down the airstrip. But he bucks like a pack horse. He has no imagination. It's a pretty easy ride. It's just a glorified crow hop all the way to the end of the airstrip, and I let him buck. That wears him out. Turned him around. Next time he went to buck, I pointed toward camp. I just over under him with the reins, just popped him. Every time he quit bucking, he just lined out. When we got to camp, we went right straight through it, out the other side. And about a quarter of a mile, I got him turned around. And I rode him for the next 3 days. And he turned out to be a really good horse. He just hadn't been trained. Well, anyway, after that, it was get on every horse they didn't know anything about. And so this is up there on top in Alaska. This is interesting. This is the Chickaloon River. And from where this kid is to that river is about 1,000 feet. And off this side is about 300 feet, and right in there is about 4 feet wide. That's okay when you can see it. But I crossed that one night leading 9 horses, pitch black, and we always got off and walked across it, and I kept thinking, how are we gonna get across that in the dark? And by the time I figured out where we were already past it by a quarter of a mile. We'd ridden right across that. Yeah. That horse, let me back up just a second. Here's another thing. This horse is a good-looking horse. This horse was terrible in water, but nobody let me know that. They fished me out from under this horse going down the Chickaloon River. Want a life-changing experience? That was it. Got far enough to see my grandmother, and she'd been dead for almost 10 years. Did 2 things. Made me absolutely unafraid to die, because I know there's another side. And it makes me less judgmental about other people and their beliefs. Nice trail, that's me. I made the trail.
Wow.
This, I don't know if you can see this. That's a moose with a 63-inch rack. I shot him coming head on at 50 yards with a Model 94 30 Winchester. Not exactly recommended for shooting moose. And this is the way I grew up. I was a cowboy. I grew up on a ranch. We had cattle, and so that's the way I looked. I mean, in about 1970, 71, 72, and I broke this horse. And he was an every morning horse, but every morning. You ever see a fox smile? That's him sleeping on the kid's bed. He wanted to be a house dog. He didn't like being an outside dog. That's another pet. That's also, this is child abuse. I'll leave it. This animal, for as bad as their reputation is, had the best sense of humor of any wild animal I've ever raised. And what she was doing there was she knew if she got him under here, he'd squeal and laugh. And so that's what she did. And then, I think I got the next shot. She turns and comes right straight at you. Look at this. He's coming to me next. You know, She just loved to play. Only wild animal I ever raised that would catch a mouse and bring it to you to tease you with it. Shake it at you to see if you can get it.
What animal is that?
Badger. And once a badger, the thing you need to know about badgers is that once they lock onto something, you can't get it anyway. They're like a pair of vice grips. Okay, somewhere in there after 1970, I got a set of paints for Christmas. And that also changed my life. I started painting just for fun. And about 2 or 3 years later, my Aunt Florence signed me up for an art show in Brookings, South Dakota. I had never been to any kind of an art show. I'd never been in a gallery, ever. Had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. Well, I sold a few paintings. They told me what I was going to do. They told me what the price was at, because I had no idea. And I sold a few paintings, and I thought, you know, this really beats the hell out of digging post holes and hauling rocks. I mean, that cowboy and stuff is fun, but there's a lot of fence fixing that comes in there too. And so I decided I was gonna, you know, be an artist. Well, at the time, I could not afford really good models. And it was years before I needed them, but by the mid-'80s, I was needing to come up with some way to get some models together. So we started in what was called an artist ride. In the first 2 years, it was a wagon train. I can tell you, 15 minutes after the wagon train starts, you have all the pictures of wagons that you need. And so the guys that were kind of heading the thing up said, what would make it better? And I said, we need to find a place where we can have everything that a Western artist could want in one place. Cowboys, Indians, mountain men, teams, wagons, buggies, bullhorns, whatever. And so we put that together. And this is one of the meetings. This guy is he's still running the photo shoot up in South Dakota. So he took over when I left. Here's one of our models standing off to the side. He's probably been in several movies, most of them have. This guy's been in a lot of movies. He was also the prop man for Dances with Wolves, and then did a lot of stuff. A lot of the movies that you see now, Yellowstone, he was just working on Yellowstone, and that kind of thing. This guy is the saddle maker back here. He also made the saddle for the movie Quigley Down Under, and a lot of stuff in that, so that's back when my beard was still dark. But this is, and in the meantime, I was also riding to rendezvous with the mountain men. And in the process, I've ridden horseback pretty much from the Canadian border all the way to South Park. And Ellie and I rode one stretch of it in '94 for Antoine Rougeau's 200th birthday. We rode from his fort up by Vernal, Utah to the fort in Delta. 180 miles, 8 days. There's a trail right across here. And I was leading a pack mule. I did not want to be where she was. And I saw a rock sticking out. Every time anything touched her pack, she decided to buck it off. Buck the pack off. Trees, branches, anything. I could see a rock sticking out. The artist in you is cold-blooded. I know she's going to hit that rock. I know she's going to jerk back and pull away from me. So I make sure first there's no coils in the lead rope. I don't want to go with her. Then I reach down and unhook my saddlebags, because my camera's in the saddlebag. That's her going down the mountain. This is about 500 feet down, shot through a telephoto. This is Flower. This is her butt down, her nose is up. She's got a hind foot sticking this way, so she's rolling backwards. Should have killed her. broke the pack saddle in 5 places. When she got done, she had a cut on her nose right there. That was it. That was all. Next day, she was broke the pack. No more bucking. This is my son on his one big pack trip that he went with me. This is a place called the Catwalk. When you look past your stirrup down here, the Shoshone River, the South Fork of the Shoshone looked like a ribbon. It was probably 500 to 700 feet straight down. This rock is just cut out. There's actually places where it even overhangs, where it's cut out, and they drove pipes back into the wall and laid logs down and then put dirt down over that. And you were right on that. Before we got done, on that trip, we got a little incident where my horse slid off, the trail broke off, and we slid. We had 30 feet to slide, and then it dropped off the edge of the world. We used up 25 feet pretty fast. Got him stopped, got back up on the trail, turned all the animals around on the trail by standing them up against the wall. Got them back off, turned and got back up there, and the first thing Clayton said to me was, "I didn't know you could hear your heartbeat like that." That's all he could. Never got on another horse for 15 years after the trip was over. This is riding with Mountain. This is good. We had been riding across on the Oregon Trail from up by Fort Hall all the way down to Fort Bridger, which is a pretty bleak stretch. So right here we came to a nice stream. I don't know if the next shot showed that. Yes. It's really a nice place. One problem. See this railroad track? Well, right as we got there, the train went by. No big deal. So we hobbled our horses up, put them out there. We just said, we're going to take a bath. The train went by. How many trains can go by? More than we thought. So we're all in the water taking a bath, so no big deal. We're already in the water, right? And I looked over at my mule, and I could tell that he was looking at the biggest snake that he had ever seen. And about then, the mule and all the horses just took off. Fortunate, my old black and white horse never learned to run with a hobble dog. It's like running with his pants down. He's just going as fast as he can go, but I can still catch him. But there's 4 naked mountain men out there running after him. And I look back at the train, and the engineer is crying. He is laughing. And I thought, I'm still waiting for somebody to show up in our show someday. He goes, I saw a mountain man one time. So, lots of pack pictures. So, in 1990, I started working before, in July. And I was the director. And on my birthday, about a month later, this woman shows up. And she was a volunteer at the fort for a year. And I kept trying to get my cousin to go out with her. I was married at the time. And, my wife Ned had moved down from South Dakota to Colorado in '88. And she'd always wanted to be on her own. Always. And so finally, in '91, she called me up and said, "I'm going back to South Dakota." "Oh, and you're not." And I thought, well, I've talked her out of leaving enough time. It's time to just let her go. And so on her way out the door, she goes, "You should be going out with somebody like Ellie." Okay. So the first date we went on, pretty much the only date we ever went on. was, we went to the Sundance with the Southern Youth down by Ignacio. And let me tell you, it was pitch black when we got there. But on the way down, we had 3 hours to drive down and back. And it was like a job interview. How do you think about this? What do you think about this? How do you feel about that? All the way down, all the way back. By the time we got back, I think both of us knew where this relationship was going to go. And we've been married 31 years. And everybody should be so lucky to have it so easy. Instead, this is her wedding dress. People asked me if I was wearing a pistol when we got married. I said, dang right. You never know when they're going to take off. So back to the photo shoots. And back to reasons people don't ride with me. Okay, I'm modeling for some other artists. See this weed? You'll see it in the next few shots. From here to right here is a free fall. But right here, the horse slides back under you. Yeah, but there's that weed. You have to tip everything back. You have to keep your legs back. You cannot put your feet out ahead of you to brace, because if you do, you'll over-center your horse and then it'll be a somersault. And anytime I've ever done somersaults on the horse, it never turns out well. And this is the landing, and you can see the horse actually just slide back under you. And then what happens? Everybody yells, do it again, do it again. 5 times. 3 times 1 year, 2 times a few years later. Same horse. We've had teams and wagons. That's also a wagon load of grandkids here. This is getting ready. This is on our pack trip from Rubidoux Fort up by Vernal. And this was good. You know in the movies, whenever the men all leave camp, what happens? The women are left back in camp by themselves. The Indians show up, right? Ed and I are down watering horses, and Ellie's in camp, and the Indians show up. And actually,
Well, there's a little more to that story. When it was to commemorate Antoine Rubidaux's 200th birthday. He's the guy that had the fort in Delta and up in near Vernal, at the confluence of the White and the Green Rivers. And so Dan contacted the tribe, the Northern Utes, in April, asking permission to ride across their land. And they said, oh, okay, they'll take care of it. And April, May, June, July came, nothing. We reminded them, nothing, still nothing. And then, oh, I can use my teacher voice.
have a need for the video.
Okay, and then right in the beginning of September, they said, oh, just go, tell them we said it was okay. So I have no credentials with me, and this Indian shows up, and he turned out to be a reporter from their newspaper who knew we were there and just wanted a little background story for it. So
They wrote a really nice article.
yeah, so it was all good, but you know, all of a sudden I don't have any backup, and this guy shows up, but it was good. He was good. So.
Well, and the other thing is that when we started out, so we rode across the Northern Ute Reservation for 2.5 days, and I can tell you, we met 2 cars. We met one of them twice, but it was the guy, one of the guys that was irrigating in the field down there, and one Bronco full of Utes, which was interesting because years later, we were doing an event down here at the Ute Museum, and a girl came up to us and said, "I saw you riding across our, up in our country one time." I said, "Northern Ute, Brad?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "Were you in a white Bronco?" She goes, "Yes, I was." The only people we saw the whole time up there on that part. But this was getting ready to go. This was interesting. All of these, pictographs are chipped into the wall. And the thing I thought was the best on this thing, you can do this and you can do this and all this pretty simple stuff. But whoever did this team and wagon up here was an artist. Because that's tough. And what he's doing, and off to the side, there's also another part where you can see they're trading for buffalo robes. The only men that could have been there when there were still buffalo robes up there was Antoine Roubidoux and his men, because the buffalo were gone off the West Slope by 1850. And Roubidoux
Where
was,
is that?
this is
It's on the Northern Ute Reservation.
southwest of Vernal, probably 40 miles.
Right. And we came out at Westwater, which is the first exit when you're leaving Grand Junction on I-70 heading west. It's the first exit in Utah. Westwater, no services.
Go back here.
Okay.
Now we're back. So this is, there's some bleak country right across out there. It's really, and then we came to a place where we had Antoine Roubidoux' journal from 1842, or a preacher's journal from 1842. Joseph Williams, and he said, "Tonight we slept under the pictured rock and slept very comfortable, even though it was raining." And that night, we were there, we slept under the pictured rock, and we slept pretty comfortably, even though it was raining. It was a perfect spot to do that. And right across the canyon from there was a rock that said, "Antoine Roubidoux passed this way 13 November 1837 to establish a trading house at the rivers Green and White." That's where we started.
All in French.
All in French. Now, on this side over here, I don't think I have a photograph, but no, I don't. There are a lot of Fremont pictographs, and then there's petroglyphs. Petroglyphs are those that are chipped in. Pictographs are painted on. But then there are Ute, later period, chip-in petroglyphs. Then there was an inscription that said, "Judge not, and you be not judged. Judge as you be judged." Except judge is spelled without the D, which is the French spelling. And Roubidoux had a very distinct script, little triangles out on the ends of his letters a lot. So Roubidoux wrote this, but the preacher had been harping at him a little bit. Antoine was 6 feet tall, good-looking, magnetic personality. People that met him liked him, except that if he were alive today, he'd be your neighborhood pimp, gun runner, and drug dealer. He was a skunk. So, anyway, and the first night out on this back trip, the preacher said 2 of these Indian women ran off and he held up the whole procession for 2 days while they sent back and had another one brought up. That's where the idea for traveler checks came from. You gotta be old to even know what traveler's checks are. So this is riding, we rode down, this actually got water in it a little bit. But we finally got to a dry wash. We're riding down a dry wash. Ellie's riding in front, and her horse.
The only time they let me ride in front, and I walked them into quicksand.
And her horse went in, hit it, my horse hit it, and it's a good thing she can ride as well as she does. Because that horse did a 90-degree turn and a power lunge out. And it's as bad or worse than bucking. It was something. And we both powered out of it in that. It was quite the trip. And people ask us, did you have fun? No, we had an adventure. Tell them why. Fun is.
Fun is going for a horseback ride, then going home, taking a shower, going out to dinner, or fun is, going for a horseback ride and staying someplace where they turn down your bed and leave a chocolate on your pillow. But you know how dogs can lay down and just like be asleep? People can do that too. I'm not a real good sleeper always, but on that trip, you're so tired, physically just exhausted, and it's riding 9 hours a day. And then you get off the horse and you have to find firewood to fix supper.
Put up a tent.
Yeah, but I didn't do that.
No, but it was a combination.
Yeah.
I would take care of the horses and put up a tent. She would get the firewood together, get the stuff, then something ready to go to eat.
And you're just absolutely exhausted. But I taught 4th grade here for a long time, and the school district actually, back in the 90s, gave me the week off to do this, provided I would do presentations about it. And I will tell you, it made me a much better Colorado history teacher to have done that. Because one thing I learned is everything that's important to you here, like did I pay the electric bill or whatever, has no meaning out there whatsoever. And everything that's important out there, like is there going to be enough feed for the horses, or is, what's the weather going to be like? Is there going to be lightning or anything? We don't even think about here. We don't care if it's raining tomorrow. But out there, it's a whole different set of what's important. So
Here's that. Judge not, be you be not judge. Judges you be judge. That's it. And it's on the same rock wall with a lot of these. And I wish I had put in the picture of this panel right here. Because this is, these are Fremont, so they're old paintings. But this is a woman with her arms crossed. And what you can't see is up on top, there's lines coming off, which in the drawing is anger. And then there's a skinny one right here, and she's got dots flying out of her head. And I thought, there's somebody that was in trouble at home. And But it was interesting, and then the panel we slept under was right off to this side. That's where we slept. Now, you won't recognize this spot except for one thing. This is Fool's Hill between Delta and Grand Junction. And the highway is right up here. Well, we can't ride along the highway, so we came right down this wall, right here, right down there. And what's funny is that we went and scouted that trail before we went up there, and there's a rock in the middle of the trail. And I thought, I wonder why that rock's still there, because you can tell it's an old pack trail. And when you move the rock, there's nothing underneath it. It's laying over the top of a crack in the rocks.
It's the Dominguez Canyon Wall.
It's Dominguez Canyon Wall. And it was steep, but we weren't the first ones to do it. But it's Rubidoux old trail. And we say Rubidoux. Down here, everybody says Rubidoux. Everywhere else, same bunch. It's Rubidoux. And when you see it spelled phonetically, back then, it's spelled R-U-B-I-D-U, Rubidoux. And there were 6 brothers and 3 nephews that covered everything this side of the Mississippi. And they were quite the crew. Not always the nicest, but they did a lot for exploration. And that's a painting another artist did of me. I mean, I've been an artist for a long time, but I've also modeled for somewhere over 2,000 artists. And every time we go past a magazine stand or something, I still take a look because I've been on so many covers, and we never know when they're going to be on there. Ellie found a set of books.
Because they're old. I mean, the photos are old.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's me getting pictures for the painting, for reference material. I used to think I could take a horse any place a buffalo could go. I was wrong. Look at this top buffalo. First of all, you can see how steep it is getting up to the rocks. You can see this guy standing there, so that's probably a good 5 to 6 foot jump, and that dummy jumped up there. And I'll tell you, he was spinning. I thought we were going to get to see him come over there backwards, but he did not. He made it up there. The rest of them were smart enough to pick their way across there. But I ran the fort for 12 years, and then I left the fort and went to work for Julie Littlefield in Scenic Mesa Ranch and helped manage the buffalo herd over there. And I guided buffalo hunts there. Now, when I first started working over at Julie's, I was still working at the fort, and she needed some help. I went out to photograph buffalo. They were short-handed, and so she said, well, could you run a gate? Well, anybody can run a gate. So I said, sure. So I'm running the gate. Pretty quick, they said, well, we have a guy back there that's getting things too stirred up. And the quieter you can keep buffalo, the happier everybody's gonna be. So she said, we need to put him on that gate and get him off of that alley. And she said, is there another place you'd rather work? And I said, where you're short-handed. Is because, like I said, I grew up on a ranch. It's coming out of this corral and going into the alley. And I said, I'll bring them out of there and keep the alley full. And she said, you'll go in the corral with them? I said, yeah. She said, they're not like cattle. I said, you ever been in a pen full of limousine yearlings? They're just like a tornado. Just do this and that. And so I started working for her, and they got done faster than they'd ever gotten done before. But part of it was just organization, just get them organized. And so I started working for her. But usually, when you're working buffalo like that, one will get hurt or two will get hurt. So one night, I bring home a buffalo that had gotten injured, and I shot it. And Julie said, was this going to drag it to the dead hole? And I said, yeah, I'll take that. So I brought her home, and Ellie and I are skinning this buffalo about midnight. She's got to go to school the next day. And it's cold, and we're out there skinning. She goes, I bet we're the only people that are skinning buffalo in Colorado right now. And I said, I bet you could widen that circle.
And then people say, oh, what's it like being married to Dan?
Well, this is just one of the buffalo ones. Now, one of the things you need to know is what your horses learn. And I didn't know this. I mean, I've used my horses up in hunting camps and that, but I'd never used them for hunting. When we were hunting buffalo, we used the horses for hunting. And what your horse learns is we don't go home till we kill one. So my horse would track them like a dog. Nose on the ground, follow them till we get them. Now, her horse is the one on the left up here. We always called him a sight hound. He always wanted to go to the top of the hill. And then you'd see him stand up there and all of a sudden he'd spot one and it'd be 2 miles away, and it was like riding toward the barn. He's all happy. I know where they are. But he couldn't figure out why he wouldn't just shoot the first one he came to. And we were very specific about what we were doing. And what we were doing, we were taking the old bulls that had been kicked out of the herd. It was our way of culling them from the herd without stressing the rest of the herd. If you round up all the buffalo together and you bring in those bulls that have been kicked out, the minute they get in the corral, the fight's on. And they're gonna kill other buffalo, and it's gonna stress your whole herd. And everybody thinks it's gonna be like shooting a cow in a feedlot. And I've never hunted a warier animal. And I've hunted just about everything on this continent. The only thing that comes close, big cats, mountain lions. But I can tell you, while you're hunting them, they're trying to figure out how to kill you first. And they came real close a time or two. So, when we got one down, my horse, now, this isn't my good buffalo hunt, this is my last buffalo hunt horse, but this horse, Ellie's horse, and this little Mustang right here, we got really good at hunting buffalo too. And that, these are just some of the hunters. Now this is my horse that would track her. The other thing with that horse is if he didn't go over to them, don't go over to them. When they go down, they'll lay down and look like they're dead, and they're waiting for you. And he could hear their heartbeat from about 20 yards. And so he'd just stand there, and as soon as they were dead, he'd go over and nose them. That meant it was time for me to do my job. But until he nosed them, nobody went over there, including the other horses. But as soon as he nosed them, the other horses know how this goes. It's time for pictures. So they all go around and they all line up behind the dead buffalo, which is pretty good. And they just stand there, and we call a tractor to truck. And we come in, and I got the buffalo, and then they haul it, you know, the horses just stand there while we're doing that. They stand about from here to where Ellie is. And then, when you go to put the buffalo on the truck, somebody needs to go catch the horses. Because now it's over. As soon as that buffalo goes on the truck, they start for home. They go back to whichever cabin's closest. Now, we hunted out about 3 different cabins, and all of them had feed. And so you'd see them standing there doing this, and they start back to the closest one, not running, just walking. And whether you're with them or whether you're not has no bearing on this. Yeah. So this is getting ready to go out one morning. Now, if anybody thinks it was a fun day to go buffalo hunting, this is it. This is my hunters. This is the girl that was helping me. And we have to pick the one bull out of this herd that we want. And I found him. And we're not very far, because you couldn't see very far. I mean, this is probably within 30 yards of this herd. And we're on a horse. And my hunter is riding the little Mustang right here. And I said to him, okay, here's the bull we want, get off your horse. Well, he wasn't getting off anything. But he finally did, and he made a good shot and got him down and that. This is the buffalo that I shot. This is right before I pulled the trigger. You see how this horse is all spread out? He's waiting for the shot, because there's a buffalo coming to kill us. And he knows it, and I know it. But he's grazing sideways, like nothing's going on. He's doing the sideways sneak, doing this, and the horse is just waiting. But he's got to get so close before he can make a run on us, and we just let him come. And these are bullets around that horse's neck. And that's him, big boy. But bad attitude from the time he was a youngster. This is our house. This is our place. There's that moose track from 1970. Still hanging together. Inside of the house. And that's our dog that we have right now. Annie watches too much TV. I've never had a dog that watches TV and gets it to a point where if it looks like a dog's going to get hurt or get in trouble, she'll leave the room. She has movies that she likes that we just don't even want to let her watch because she makes a racket. And we have a movie that she likes, but she knows that the dog gets killed at the end, and she'll watch it all the way up to within about 5 minutes of that, and she'll leave the room. She knows the movie. These are our cabins down below the house, and that's it for this deal here. So anyway, one quick thing here. Here's one of my paintings. This is a color study for a big painting. I do small ones to work out the bugs, to see if my fingers are going to work, and see if I need to change things. Right now I'm showing in galleries in Santa Fe, Jacksonville, Park City, and Scottsdale. And the other thing I brought is this. This is from the fort. When I ran the fort, we didn't just pretend to be those guys. We did it. We trapped problem beavers for the Division of Wildlife, and we picked up roadkills. So we saved the hides. The meat went to families that needed the meat, because a lot of times the meat's good. And so we saved all the hides. And so when you went into our hide room, it was stacked to the ceiling. And this is, we brought all the hides out, and at one time we scattered them out. This is before we even had this many, but we scattered them out on the floor of the fort and covered the entire thing. The whole fort was covered with fur. I drove through the mountain lions, grizzly bears, black bears, otters, some of everything on there. So anyway, we've got time for questions.
I remember from, I'm sorry, I realized it's turned off. I remember from years ago that you said of the roadkill, there was only one kind of meat you wouldn't eat again. Do you remember that story?
Which one?
Doberman. You said you'd never eat a Doberman dog again.
Rottweilers.
Oh, Rottweilers were? Okay.
Oh yeah. People say, have you ever eaten dog meat? I said, enough to have a choice. Preference.
So Dan has some interesting things up here. I'm sure he'd be willing to let you come look at it later. But right now, anybody have questions?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with some of your paintings. Have you shown at the Montrose Art Center, or is that too low?
Well, it's not too local, I'm priced out of their price range.
Ah,
The reason I don't show down at the Montrose Art Center is because I don't want people dying of heart attacks. When you're going down and looking at paintings that are 300, 400, 500, and you come to one that says 30,000, it's gonna put you out of the market. And
You
so,
showed it on the cast.
but that, oh, I did, I showed, when they had Around the Corner, and that, I sold a few paintings out of there, but what's interesting was some of Ellie's friends were down there and they were looking at one of the paintings that had like $24,000 on it. And they were going, does he ever sell those? Well, about 2 weeks later, they asked her, do you ever sell that painting? She says, oh yeah, I took it down to Santa Fe, it sold right away.
yeah, I've been to your gallery, the gallery in Santa Fe. I've
Yeah.
seen a couple of them.
Yeah, and so, I would show here locally, but it's kind of pointless. For two reasons. One is, there's nothing to compare it to. When you're in Santa Fe, you can find a lot of paintings in that price range. So you can go, well, it's worth this or this or this. And here, you can't tell. I could just make up any number. I could put 60,000 on it. What would be the difference, And so that's one thing. The other thing is bragging rights. Even people who have the money to buy it here will still go to Santa Fe and buy it. Or Scottsdale. Who bought this? Scottsdale, So, anyway.
Hi, I was a volunteer at the Montrose Botanical Society maybe 2 years ago or something. When you, am I correct, you were taking down an old structure in Cerise Park?
Yes.
And I was wondering what happened, what that was and what's going to happen with that.
Well, you need to come out and see it. I got it up. I need 6 more logs to finish it. And so what I need to do is either get some cottonwood logs from the city down in Cerise Park and finish it, or I need to talk to the Forest Service. Well, this time of year, the Forest Service is out because the logs I need are in the snow and that. So I'll probably talk, have either I will talk to them or somebody from the botanical, But they also had a change of leadership in their board. So you got board members who want to have it finished and board members who don't really care, like any board. But it's really going to be a nice cabinet if they just let me finish it. But I told them if they wanted it done, because it was just sitting there in a pile. And once you do that, it just rots down faster and faster. And so I said, just let me take it home. I had it all put up in 2 weeks. But now I need a few more logs just to finish it up. And we'll get it in there and get it set up.
Danny, thank you very much for doing that. I didn't know that, and I was very involved with the Historical Society when we were trying to restore it down in Cerise, and that just never worked. So I'm really glad you took that and have done that.
Well, yeah, you can come up if you come up to the house. I'm glad to show you.
So where will it be set up?
They have a pad already set up for it at the Botanical Gardens. And they want to put a dirt roof, with a sod roof on it that they'll have to water. And they can plant flowers or whatever they want, So, but it's probably about a 12 by 14 cabin, and ain't bigger than that. So.
We have time for one more question. Anybody has something you just really need to know?
You've obviously lived a really colorful life. When you look back, Dan, what stands out? What would you say has been most meaningful to you in terms of you as a person?
Well, it's probably the biggest influences in my whole life. Horses are number one. In fact, Ellie was talking to, we had a foreign exchange teacher stay with us from Japan. And Ellie told him, if I had not been able to ride, Dan would not have married me. And he couldn't believe that would be, yes. He was right. We deprived, partly because that's where our interest lies. And we ride a lot. We still ride quite a bit. And in fact, I had both knees replaced because, I mean, they were bad to start with. But riding hurt so bad that I could only ride for about half an hour, and I knew I had to get off. It hurt so bad. Well, I wasn't sure when I stepped off that they would hold. So I got both knees replaced. She had both hips replaced for the same reason. So we could ride, and now we're back at it. Yeah, so horses have been the biggest influence. The other thing was, when I first got into the buckskin thing and the mountain man thing, I was modeling for an artist named Paul Kelly. And Kelly, they were doing a documentary on him. He did all, you've used his stuff without ever knowing. He did the lunar landing stamp, the spacewalk stamp, the helping hand stamp, canoe stamp. He did 35 different stamps for the post office. But they were doing a documentary on him, on his Western stuff. And he asked me questions during this interview that I did not know the answer to. And when we got done, he goes, if you're gonna do this, do it right. Do your research and get it right. That changed everything for me. And it's also what qualified me to run the Fort and Delta, is that I had taken that to heart. And so those are two big influences, that. And the other thing is that little trip down the river underneath the horse. You know, I've tried swimming underneath horses twice now. Neither time was very successful. And it was a near-death experience. It changes your whole attitude toward everything. Not afraid to die. A little concerned about how. Still a chicken. But anyway.
Well, Dan, we're glad you survived that experience. And we're glad you came to join us this morning and share all this wonderful information. So thank you to both you and Ellie for being here this morning. Please join me.